Hello, good people of St. Martin, and welcome to the Integrity Chamber's video series, Integrity in Voting. I'm your host, Kevin James, and today we're going to discuss the effects of the electoral process on the labor sector. To give us some more insight into this subject matter, I have with me here today the Director of the Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Jude Houston. Mr. Houston, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, likewise, Mr. Kevin. It is indeed a great pleasure being here this afternoon so that we can discuss a topic of such importance, the whole idea and nature of voting and its relevance and importance.
Indeed, indeed. So before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, as you rightfully said, my name is Jude Houston. I am the Executive Director of the St. Martin Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the entity that is solely responsible for the business registry of the island. And a little bit more of myself is that I have been on the island for the past 12 years. I have worked for probably 8.5, 9 years as a senior economic advisor to the government of St. Martin, where I worked in terms of monitoring the economy and reporting on such as to the developments from a macro level.
Okay, so you know your way around the labor sector.
Well, somewhat.
All right, so the first question I'd like to ask you, Mr. Houston, why do you think voting is important?
Very good question. I think voting is very, very important, Kevin, for everyone, more or less, because of the fact that in voting, you have an opportunity to exercise your rights. In voting, you have an opportunity in determining the direction of the country. In determining, for example, you can say, voting depends on numbers.
Right.
And your number will count at some point in time. Your number will determine, your voting number will determine, for example, the direction for probably health, probably labor movements, probably education sector. In all aspects, your number could be that determining number as it relates to the socio-economic development of the country.
Very well put. So that leads me to the next question I'd like to ask you. In your opinion, what should be the priorities of government for the labor sector in the years to come?
The priorities of government. In answering such a question, I think firstly we have to come to the understanding as to the role of government. As government, one of their top role and functions should be that of ensuring the well-being of all.
Right.
And if we narrow into the labor market and how important or what they should have as a top priority, remember, as a voter, you now has a responsibility to hold those who you are voting for accountable. What should be a priority of government is that of ensuring that we do have the right legislation. We do have the right legislation that will create the ambience for both the employer and the employees to function in the labor sector.
That's a very interesting perspective, which makes me wonder, in your opinion, once again, what are the effects of the frequent elections and changes in leadership on the labor sector?
Well, first I will break down that question, because if you're looking at in terms of the changing effects of a constant changing from in terms of leadership, number one, it creates a level of what they call uncertainty.
Right.
And that level of uncertainty can have what you call indirect effects or negative effects. For example, imagine if you are an investor and you have spoken to one minister as to your idea in the month of January, and come from April, you have a follow-up meeting, is another minister. Mm-hmm. And then come June, is another minister. How will you feel as an investor? You will feel like, no, this is just too unstable for me to invest my monies. Right. So with that, what you're going to have happening now, that investor will probably pull out from the investment, and indirectly is going to impact your labor market, because with foreign investment, or with any investment, whether foreign or local, you have an opportunity to grow your labor market. You have an opportunity to create a positive impact on your labor market. For example, you create employment. So that investor that probably wanted to build a hotel that has a capacity or the capability of creating employment for 500 persons is no longer there. So eventually you will realize that that's a lost or negative impact it can have on the labor market.
Indeed, indeed. And so then, lastly, I'd like to then challenge you to present potential solutions. And so my last question is, what elements of the labor sector should remain stable, in your opinion, in spite of the changes in leadership?
What should remain stable?
Right.
I think, as an economist, I will be straight up and say that I think for the labor market, it is very, very, very important that focus should be on what you consider capacity building within our labor force.
Okay.
With capacity building, if you have to remember that labor is what you consider as one of the factors of production. And it is always desirous to have your labor at 100%.
Right.
The labor capacity at 100%, fully employed at 100%, so to speak. So to do that, you have to build capacity. You have to ensure that the right measures, you have to ensure that the right programs, you have to ensure that the right mechanisms are applied so that your labor force are properly equipped so as to make use of the opportunities to fulfill the mandate of being productive.
Okay.
If you don't do that, all other socioeconomic factors that evolves around labor, that evolves around the country's development, can have what, how must I put it, negative consequences if that is not considered as a focus or a priority of any government.
Well, some brilliant ideas from you, Mr. Houston. Thank you very much for taking the time to share with us today.
You're welcome. Very much so welcome.
And to the people of St. Martin, I hope this conversation was beneficial to you, and thank you for supporting us on our mission to build integrity for future generations. Stay tuned for the next video in our series, Integrity in Voting.